Welcome to Fleet News Group podcast, where we talk about all things fleet and particularly sustainability and circular economy practices. I'm Caroline Falls, and today I'm speaking with Brendan Wheeler. Brendan is a co-founder of EVSE, which sells Australia's biggest range of EV charging hardware, software and solutions. Welcome, Brendan. It's so nice to be able to speak with you again.
Yeah, thanks very much, Caroline. Really exciting to be here today and looking forward to our conversation.
Well, a lot has happened since we last talked about a month ago at the EVSE Fleet Conference in Brisbane. We had the federal government release its EV strategy, and so I'm so glad that I have you on today because, believe it or not, it was your LinkedIn post that gave me the heads up that the EV strategy had been released. So I'd love to get your reaction to it. What do you like about it? And is there anything you don't like?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's really, really exciting. I think for quite a long time, Australia has been lacking in policy at a federal level. We're very much in the wilderness when it came to the approach to electric vehicles, despite all that was happening overseas and with OEMs committing to phasing out petrol vehicles. We're sort of in the wilderness with where we were going as a nation. So I think it's an exciting step. We're starting to see alignment at a state, federal and local level, which should really help to set the foundation for explosive growth over the next few years. We are seeing some sort of industry consultation around the fuel emission standard. So we're yet to see the fine detail and exactly where that sort of lands in the next few weeks. But hopefully it's something that is, in line perhaps with what some countries such as New Zealand and the US have put forward, and really gives us, the right kind of messaging out to the market as far as where Australia is heading. So, look, I think all in all, it's a great step in the right direction, and really excited to see how it helps stimulate the market.
Yeah, as you said, it's definitely going to build on the already sort of growing adoption and inquiry for all things EV. As you say, stimulate the market. But already that sort of adoption or inquiry's gone through the roof since the federal government announced the fringe benefit tax discount for non-luxury vehicles late. I think it was earlier than December, but it got legislated in December last year. Anyway, from your perspective as a guy on the charging infrastructure side, like what's happening with inquiry and demand for your service?
Yeah, so I mean, we've definitely seen an exponential sort of increase in inquiries, definitely. We're seeing more and more sort of push, particularly in the corporate space, with really, hard set sustainability targets and ESG requirements around decarbonisation of transport and fleets. So that's probably where we're seeing the leading kind of activity levels. In the residential space, that's picking up as well with the greater kind of reach with vehicle selection, the entrance of the likes of BYD and so forth to come in and provide, a broader mix and also a differentiated price point as well to make it more affordable. So look, we're seeing a lot of inquiries and growth week on week, month on month. But I guess what we're seeing most importantly is more action as well. Like a couple of years ago, there was inquiries and just inquiries, but now we're seeing inquiries which are leading to action and, quite meaningful action. People sort of understanding that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and they need to take those first steps.
This might be a good time to get you to tell us a bit more about EVSE, how it came about, when you founded it, who you founded it with, and why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So our mission as an organisation is to decarbonise the way that we move and really accelerate the uptake of electric vehicles across Australia. Sam and myself founded the business in 2015, so quite a long time ago. And what we were was we took a trip to Europe in 2014 and we were completely amazed at what was happening over there. Hadn't heard anything about EVs at all, knew nothing about the technology, but we saw them everywhere. And we knew that this was something that was going to fundamentally change transportation and the technology was cool, and obviously it was really great for the environment as well. So we came back from that trip, really inspired, and that really sparked our interest and kind of the seed of the business. We initially started the business sort of selling online, so an e-commerce solution. But what happened was that quickly grew out to an end-to-end solution as our customers were looking for more bespoke solutions, installation, engineering support, software. So since that point, we've grown really rapidly. We now have 40 employees across 3 offices in Sydney, Brisbane, and Victoria. And we have quite a large reach across the country with our network of electrical partners who help us deliver solutions, all across the country. So, yeah, it's really exciting. Our business covers residential, commercial, fleet, government, and public applications as well. So we're right across that spectrum. And we're really passionate about the user experience as well. I think that's one thing, being so early in the market, being EV drivers ourselves, the user experience is something that is crucially important to us. For this technology to become mainstream, it needs to be simple, it has to be easy, and it needs to be intuitive. So that drives us as individuals and as an organisation.
It was interesting that you said that there's sort of been a bit of a step change lately in that there's a bit more action, but I do imagine you spend a lot of time educating your potential customers and helping them design what they need or want. I mean, I don't imagine they show up knowing exactly what they want. So how much of what you do is helping educate your customers, and how do you go about that?
Yeah, look, that's certainly a huge part of what we do on a daily basis, and it's probably reflective of where the market is right now. There's a lot of people who are coming across electric vehicles for the first time. Things like kilowatts, amps, kilowatt hours. These terminology, which are part of the EV vernacular, are not commonplace for most people. People understand liters of fuel and cents per liter. So there's definitely a huge educational piece around the vehicles, how they're charged, how they're operated, what type of electrical infrastructure is required to actually put charging infrastructure in. So yeah, there's a lot of work we do at the front end to educate people. And I know from a commercial perspective, a lot of our conversations start with people approaching us saying they need, a 150 kilowatt DC charger. But we've really got to take them all the way back to the start and ask some of those fundamental questions, such as, how many vehicles do you have? How far are they driving? How long are they parked for? And really go into a bit more depth and detail around those aspects to then come up with the final solution, because we understand that this is step one of a multi-step journey for a lot of fleet operators or corporates who are looking to transition. And I think the key for our customers and our partners is that they can work with us as a trusted, experienced provider who've got a track record of deploying solutions across the country for different size customers and different size fleets. That experience to actually work with a partner that can assist them in designing that, so that each subsequent step as their fleet grows can be part of a broader plan rather than a brand new project each time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like there, you're saying, you started 8 years ago, and that you can be a trusted sort of provider. But I was just wondering, because this is must be. It's a new area, it's a new industry, it's a growth area. Like, are there cowboys out there? Like, how do people find somebody like you, a reliable provider?
Yeah,
How
look, I would.
mature is the Australian charging supply marketplace? I mean, it's not mature at all.
No, look, it's still a pretty niche market. It's not it's not quite like solar in the sense that everyone's in on it. I think there's a few things that make it different to solar. One is that users are interacting with these charging stations daily, and they power business critical vehicles, or the way you get to work. So if there's an issue or a problem, that needs to be resolved and fixed really quickly. Right now, I think for a lot of people, there's enough risk as it is and uncertainty transitioning to an electric vehicle to then take additional risk using an unknown quantity with products that you've never heard of. All of that just rolls up into something that's far too hard. So what we found is that sort of partnership approach really helps make the customer understand that we're with them, along every step of that journey. A great example I could give it to you guys is Canterbury Bankstown Council. They operate one of the largest EV fleets in the country. They're a council based out in Western Sydney. We first started working with them in 2018, and we've since worked with them each year to expand their initial site, to add several other sites, and I think they're up to about 50 odd chargers now across 4 sites, and now looking to push into decentralize the charging to account for vehicles that are going home now. So it speaks to that need to work with someone on an ongoing basis that can support you as that journey evolves.
Oh, you made me interested. I want to talk to them one day. But just, I mean, with that incredible experience, then, like, what are the key features a fleet manager needs to consider if they're sort of setting out to tender for EV charging installation, hardware, software, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I think one really important thing to look at as a first step is to actually look at the vehicle fleet and perhaps have a vehicle sort of transition plan, understand which vehicles you're going to be transitioning first, the usage patterns and where they're parked, dwell times, etc. Because that then feeds into the charging requirements. The next step would be a consultation around your sites and the available electrical capacity at those sites. So that's going to be a limiting factor. We do go to some government departments or older buildings which do have limited capacity, and that's going to dictate what you can put in from a charging perspective. So blending in the vehicles and the infrastructure at your sites and offices is going to be really important to come up with a full picture around what's possible. But as I mentioned earlier, really starting with the end in mind, understanding where you're headed towards, and really sort of breaking that down into steps is important, because what we want to do is create the foundation for for growth and expansion. So I think the key with EV charging deployment is making sure that the infrastructure you put in is future-proof and scalable. So part of that will be how the backbone infrastructure is designed, whether we're running additional conduits to allow for easy expansion, EV distribution boards that give you that expansion capability. Also making sure it's fit for purpose from a specification perspective. So making sure we're not putting in really fast DC chargers if these vehicles are sitting there overnight for 12 hours and doing 40 or 50 k's a day. That's overkill, and can potentially lead to a roadblock down the track when you look to expand. So really trying to match the infrastructure with the use case of the vehicles is the key thing. And OCPP, which is the industry standard, is important because it gives you flexibility as a fleet operator to know that you're not locked into any one vendor. So the obvious comparison for OCPP is the same way that your Apple iPhone could be put onto Telstra, Optus, or Vodafone if you weren't happy with that network. So I think, factoring in flexibility, future-proofing and scalability, and just making sure that what you're using is well supported. The other thing I'd probably mention is support and maintenance. I know we've seen a bit in the media recently around uptime of chargers and various infrastructure being offline or under repair. I think that's an important consideration, and it's something that is often overlooked. You service and maintain your car. The same thing should be done with your charging stations, making sure that they're inspected yearly is an Australian standard, and something that increases the longevity of that asset.
Oh, you raised several points that I want to sort of expand on a bit, and one of them was talking about older buildings maybe not having the capacity. And I just recently came across a word I hadn't heard before, and I think it was grid grab, like land grab. There's this grid grab going on. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you heard that term, and do you see any evidence of that?
Look, I haven't specifically heard it, but I mean, we're working with a grid that's designed to support a certain amount of infrastructure at the moment. So EVs potentially have that risk attached to them. I know it gets a lot of stigma in the media around if everyone comes home and plugs in at 6 p.m., we're going to crash the grid. But I guess what we can look at is overseas markets where, they're looking at, new vehicle sales of 20% up to Norway being closer to 80%. And how have they managed it? What can we do to actually utilize EVs as an asset to the grid rather than a strain or a potential challenge to the grid? So things such as, tariffs or certain sort of, incentives that drive behavior. So we've got a stack of excess solar in the middle of the day. What we want to do is be able to soak that up and absorb it, and also shift people's behavior so that whilst they might plug in at 6 p.m., the charging may not actually occur until later on in the evening in that sort of off-peak time, or when there's a lot more availability in the grid. So there's a lot we can do when it comes to EV charging, utilizing sort of smart charging requirements, utilizing V2G when it's available, or V2H, and also just tariffs and various other rewards to set up and create the right behavior patterns in people to support what we need to support.
Yeah, I love that. The smart charging. Yeah, there's so much that we need to sort of learn and bring into our sort of daily habits. Another point that you brought up a little bit earlier was things like maintenance of EV chargers. So, like, how reliable are chargers, and what happens when they're broken, and how important is it for users to have a maintenance contract as a part of their supply? And sorry, but while I'm on the topic of maintenance, like, electric vehicles, may not require the same level of maintenance as a traditional internal combustion engine powered vehicle, but chargers, like, do they? So what sort of maintenance schedules and costs should be expected?
Yeah, I think everyone that has an EV charger, particularly in a commercial setting, should give thought to maintenance. I think that's the benefit in utilizing an end-to-end service provider such as us for a customer, because they're not having to chase, an electrician, a software provider, a hardware provider. They're going to sort of one source, and we can manage and support them with that. So it cuts down that time of response, and also the time to find a solution and get a fix for them. But definitely maintenance is something that we found a lot of customers don't give a lot of initial thought to. But you're making a significant investment here, right? This is your fuel pump. It needs to be operational. If your vehicles aren't available for a day or two, that can cost you a lot of money, as well as being an inconvenience. So we definitely make it part of our discussion with the customer to highly recommend that they do it. Australian Standards recommends you should be doing it once every 12 months at a minimum. For DC chargers, for infrastructure that is heavily used, for things that are public facing, that requirement would increase. It's like anything. If you're driving a car, 60,000 k's a year versus 10,000 k's a year, that needs to be serviced more regularly. Same thing with EV chargers. If it's being used harder, if it's open to public generally don't treat things the same way that someone that bought and owned that asset would. So those things factor into that metric around maintenance, but it should be something that is very much thought of and factored into any budget.
I also wanted to talk about public charging network versus home or depot charging. So I recognise there's a need for, an extensive public network, particularly to help tamp things like range anxiety. But it just sort of seems a little bit ridiculous in a way to have so much chatter on that point, when in reality, like, overseas studies indicate that some 80%, even up to 95% of electric vehicles are likely to be charged at home. And I think we talked earlier, not in this conversation, but maybe at Ibuya or somewhere, about a Bloomberg report I saw that showed in China, which has got the world's, biggest public charging network. I think, in fact, it said 2/3 of the world's public chargers are in China. But some of those chargers have a utilization rate of like 1%. And some are lucky to get used even once a day. So I guess what I'm saying is China's built the hugest public charging network, and it's not clear it's even needed. And I guess if there are to be such low utilization, it's hard to envisage a privately owned commercial network ever being viable. So a public EV charging network will always have to rely on government investment to, to build it. Oh, anyway, I've banged on enough there, but your thoughts as someone involved in building public charging networks, what are your views about all of that sort of thing?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's the way we think about a petrol vehicle and an EV is fundamentally different. Obviously, as you alluded to, 80 to 90% of EV charging is going to be done where the car spends the most amount of time. So that's at home and that's at workplaces. So those places are generally easy to solve for. Australia as a percentage compared to China, for instance, has more detached dwellings, less kind of high density living. So the need, the real life need for a public charging network is less. But having said that, the public charging network is critically important from a range perspective. Australia is a broad country. People do a lot of driving. It's not as small as Europe, and you're seeing during Easter breaks and Christmas breaks the stress that gets put on these networks. So what you see is they're an essential requirement, but they're not necessarily required in the same level every day of the week. As to the long-term viability, who knows where that is, but it's an essential part of it, and it helps people's perception of their ability to continue life as they know it, to be able to drive their car with the freedom of being able to hop in and drive up the coast or do the long distance holidays. So public DC charging has a role to play. I guess the way we like to look at it is it's a bit like water. You can get water from the tap for next to nothing, or you can buy bottled water at a premium. So public DC charging is much like bottled water. You pay for that charge at a higher rate, around sort of 70 cents per kilowatt hour. At home, you might be 25 cents or even less if you've got solar. So it all plays a part. I guess the other thing to consider is EV charging is not just at a petrol station or at home. You've got shopping centers, you've got destination charging at your hotel or at a council car park or at a restaurant. So anywhere you park a car is potentially a charging opportunity. So it really broadens the way you need to look at it. But it's all part of it, right? I don't think there's one magic bullet or magic solution. I think it needs a really strong combination of charging opportunities anywhere and everywhere.
Just got a couple more questions for you, but one of them was like, what are some of the projects that EVSE is involved with?
Yeah, so we do a lot in the residential space. We partner with several OEMs and deliver end-to-end solutions for their customers. So, part of the challenge, I guess, when you go to purchase an EV is the dealerships or the sales staff don't necessarily understand the charging piece. So we partner with a lot of the OEMs to deliver that solution and ensure a really seamless and end-to-end customer journey. Outside of that, we're very active in the fleet and sort of developer space. So fleets are somewhere that we're seeing huge growth and a huge push with sustainability targets, with state-based carbon emissions targets, and so forth. So those sort of customers really need quite a sophisticated approach, experience and a track record of technology to be able to implement those changes and get that ball rolling. And then the other space is that sort of property developer space I mentioned. So we've seen the upcoming change to the National Construction Code, mandating electrical infrastructure to support EVs in new developments. That space is huge. That's a big challenge that needs to be overcome. And it needs solutions that are able to load manage, to be able to bill and reimburse body corporates and strata for common power, and really maximize the building's available supply properly. So look, right now it's across the board. We're excited about some of the heavy vehicle opportunities that are rising as well in trucks and buses. It's really exciting right now. There's so much opportunity. It's fantastic.
It's so exciting. Thanks so much for your time today, Brendan. That was really cool. It was really great to talk with you.
No worries. Thanks very much for having me, Caroline. And if anyone of your listeners is interested in learning more, our website is www.evse.com.au.
You've been listening to Fleet News Group podcast. It was edited and produced by Isabella Fiorentino. You can follow us on Spotify. Just search for Fleet News Group. We're also on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube. Our website is fleetnewsgroup.com, where you can get all of our stories, videos and podcasts. Until next time, drive safely and take care.